Yeah, I'm going to bounce around through some of my collections, and I definitely brought more than I need to, so I'll edit myself a little bit too. One of the ones I like to start with sometimes, and it's Labor Day weekend, right? So this is a poem that's it's called Resume, so it's sort of my life through the labor that I've done, through the jobs that I've had, and I've had a lot of odd jobs. I've had worked with students in a lot of different ways, and so this is called Resume. The job was to cut the grass, trim the hedges, pull the weeds. It was to scrape the paint, then paint the paint. I was to cover the naked paper with ink or graphite, words and images from nothing. To place the washing machine on a dolly and lower it down the stairs. I was paid for a week's training to go door to door as a census taker, but I was never sent out to take the census. The job was to dip a plastic cup into the water over and over, counting mosquito larvae before poisoning them. I swept the halls and cleaned the courtyard. The job was to write down carefully what she wanted to do with her life. Some days I had to ask the students why they drank in the dorm, even though I knew why they drank in the dorm. Hearing about sexual assault is difficult, but not the most difficult. To clean up the trail of blood at 3 a.m. The job was to call for the 72-hour psychiatric hold. It was to run the string trimmer along the outside of the penguin enclosure and the whale tank before the park opened. I was discouraged from rhyming or using the word soul. Pull the sap buckets down from the cold taps and dump them into the horse-drawn cart. Chuck the hay bales in the wagon as it bounces over the ruts in the field. Hold this rope, and when I cut through the trunk of the tree, you have to pull hard in that direction, away from the house, then run. The job was to read 100 collections of poems and decide which were the best. That day we rode out to the wolf sanctuary and had our faces licked and wrote a story we never published. Each morning I grabbed 3 to 6 homing pigeons and took them up into the canyon with me while I shot photos of whitewater rafters. The birds carried the images back. I have to keep my lesson plan in my head when I go through the metal detector and walk past solitary confinement. I have to catch the bird, the bat, the squirrel loose in the apartment building. I rode my bike north of town at dawn to harvest vegetables and listen to people hum to themselves. You don't take off your clothes and you don't get wet. 36 warm jets of water massage your body from head to toe. I was not cut out for retail. She is working on her English, putting her life into words, and I just listen. We were building trail high in the canyon, and everywhere the beetle-killed trees were ripe for wildfire, and other duties as assigned. The next poem, I've been working on a collection that is about all of the different ways that I've been teaching. I'm calling it the Yellow Lectures right now, and this is the title poem from it. A lot of the poems are just called lessons, so I'll share a couple of those as well. But this is a longer one that sort of rumbles through some of the main ideas and introduces the themes of the text. The Yellow Lectures. At the front of the room, you have to wonder if the job is to ask questions or tell the truth. If that's a faulty either-or premise. Are we handing out tools and giving fishing lessons? You have to erase the board to start the next lecture. Yellow is the color of optimism, and yellow often symbolizes mental illness. Do you want to show everyone how the whole thing works, even if the workings of the system are horrifying? All the texts and films and metaphors I think of for this were dour, were monstrous parasites and hollow magicians. Truth-telling can be a less than cheerful responsibility, and it won't restore us or the ruins we've made of the place. Yellow says caution, says energy, says summer, says bees, and pisses on the snow. We might work hard to accurately describe the relationship between government, economy, our university, and our happiness. You could argue the neoclassical architecture on campus aspires more than it deceives, or is more honest than it meant to be. Pull from our macroeconomics and media studies, from poli-sci and industrial psych, a working model. A working model is different from a life drawing class, and at least twice as likely to feel Edenic shame and disappear. We invest endowments in arms manufacturing while we're trying to define genocide and terrorism. I have to find an image for this. The image is money, or at least digits. The more, the merrier. Yellow is more specific when we place it next to green and red. What does being primary get you if context rules? We only define some problems in terms of maximization when optimization might be more gentle, more moral. In the seminar room, neither of us can hear the bombs dropping 6,000 miles away. It feels nice and warm to believe wealth will make us future-proof. We still act out the myth that the answer to every question lurks in reduction. The parts govern the whole, and there's only one story that matters. We still dissect cats in the eyes of pigs. We smash atoms into protons and electrons, smash those into quarks, hypothetical prions. But why do the purple asters always seem to bloom beside goldenrod, she asks. Yellow is the color of vitality. It is also a warning. We associate the color with jaundice and hope. The image is the new College of Business in the complicated story of its namesake. The university asks itself if it can be more efficient. We learn by doing and doing again, by failing. This is not a yellow insanity. It is transformation. Or it could be. Someone has to make the parts for the jet engines that fly over war zones. How else will the bombs find the schools and hospitals? That's a rhetorical question. You should avoid those in your final paper. There are a number of cynical moves available to us as writers. Yellow is the sunny color of daffodils. They planted one for each of the 58,000 US soldiers killed in Vietnam. I erase the board without saying any of this aloud. I wish everyone a good weekend. I mean it. I ask myself if this is cowardice. One has to wonder. Yellow is the color of the chakra at the center of your abdomen. Some doubts live just above the stomach, where you feel both sickness and will. For next week, read the last 2 chapters and be ready to tell us what interests you. For next week, stand in the new sun with your eyes closed and tell us what you see, if you can hear the bees. For the next week, ask a question that punches someone right at the bottom of the sternum above the gathering of middle age. For next week, make a list of every yellow thing: sign of the natural food store, cover of a biography on Picasso, reprinted Nirvana concert poster in the record shop, center stripe of the pride flag, VW Beetle, neighbor's front door, Wednesdays, the Tour de France, top bar of Google Chrome, fern struggling through winter, local honey label, Tom's house, fill a page, be ready to tell us what interests you. The forsythia is blooming when I get home. Take a sip of water. Also, I'm like the sweatiest reader, so that's just a thing. Nothing I can do about it. Trying to get comfortable with it. So I'm going to read 3 of these shorter poems. They're each called Lesson. They make up the bulk of this new collection. And if you couldn't tell from the resume poem, I'm lucky enough to teach. A good day for me looks like maybe I'll start with 4th graders, and then I'll teach on the college campus, and then maybe work with adults in a mental health support group. I've gotten to write with veterans in the juvenile detention center in Akron, and all of these experiences, as I've lived them, have kind of like I feel like a responsibility to share some of their story and some of the reality of that. And so these poke at some of the different examples of that. Lesson. Think of your teaching as a kind of dramatic performance, they tell us in graduate school. We bring our notebooks to the river. I am projecting my voice, speaking loudly, louder than the waters below us, performing. My arms flail awkwardly. Parts of me close off. A railway switch, a tourniquet. Swallows catch insects above the water. My feelings about our current American moment will not help these children feel loved. Love is a closing as much as an opening. I ask a girl to show me what she can make. In an hour, she turns some of the innumerable oblong seeds dangling over the river into a carefully jeweled crown. She adjusts her headscarf and transforms the layers of fungus on a stump into the wings of sleeping moths. She is not listening to the river. It listens to her. It stands still. I am still acting and uneasy with the attention. I act still, and the river still acts. I cross the river on a bridge and cross the bridge on a bridge over the river. But the other side makes me uncomfortable. Just as these boys and girls are uncomfortable with their beauty and not with the beauty of the heron stalking among the tall grass and chipped graffiti on the bridge. When we are finished, the world is unchanged. The weight of 26 new poems does little to slow our rotation and the Cuyahoga's forced returns. I do not know how many poems it will take to jam the river, to pull its crooked vein tight until they break loose in a wild performance that guts Gorge Dam before making the sound of applause as it crashes into Lake Erie, whispering, "I'd like to thank the Academy." Lesson. After the worst of the pandemic, hopefully, I come back to teach at the Juvenile Detention Center. It's been years. I remember a lot of the boys. I hate that fact. I don't know and won't ask if they've been here the whole time. The other possibility is worse. They are supposed to be here learning their lesson, feeling sorry, breaking cycles, approximating high school. They slip their feet in and out of their rubber sandals, spend long periods of time alone in the bathroom, take their medication, argue with the officer beside the pencil sharpener, and I begin my lesson in proximity. Everything smells of sweat and fake pine scent on the last day they sleep. I feel like that's like the coolest thing that's ever happened while reading. Um, yeah, did you? Oh. All right. Lesson. This one's about AI. I like to try to embrace it in my classroom. I build a kind of Turing test for my students. It might be more cup game than imitation game. I'm more carny than scientist. 3 essays about Ross Gay, one written by AI. Neither human comes across as entirely human. Still, the giveaway is that the robot is braver than us, surprisingly more personal and poetic. The robot says, "Oh." The robot says, "The book is a sanctuary. It's a place where I can shed the carapace of cynicism." Says I, says I, says I, says saccharin. My students are skeptical of sweetness, and I used the word saccharin in a poem not so long ago. The robot profusely thanks Ross Gay for his audacity and vulnerability. John Searle kicks the box and tells us that the robot doesn't really know what a delight is. It just tricks us into thinking it does. One of my students asks if I gave the robot the same prompt I gave the students. I did not. I was trying to trick them. I asked the robot to write a deeply personal response. Perhaps it was my error using deeply. Perhaps personal was enough. Perhaps deeply opened the door to the banks of elevated adjectives and adverbs. It was obvious, they say, just not in the way we expected. I'm going to skip that one. This is currently existing as what I hope will be the concluding poem in the collection. It's called The New Lessons, and it starts with a quote from Robert Haas that goes, "All the new thinking is about loss. In this, it resembles all the old thinking." I'm trying to find all the metaphors for possible that aren't egg or flower bud. Symbols that have bodies like children who are exchanging one set of teeth for another. Oh, that they won't need them to bite the hand of a parent or lover is the prayer. I'm not a prayerful person. While hopeful, my hope has limits, even in my fully grown mouth, with mostly original teeth. The mouth is a bony limit. Is it only experience repeating experiences that limits our thinking? There must be alternatives, like if we stopped hurting and haunting each other. There might be thoughts, perhaps older than the old ones, as old as the fourth grade. Hopefully, we don't go back farther to small mouths that can shape hope and say words like galaxy or atom, which once meant future, and is now about disassembling, dissociating. The electron thread is pulling us back from the lovely naivete I want to build. I think I'll wrap up with just two more. This one is from our collection. So we recently had 81 Northeastern Ohio poets contribute to a collection on the species that make up Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It was just officially launched. Well, we had our book launch last week, but the publication date was just this Tuesday. So I'm really excited about this project. And it's always easier to talk about something with other people involved than your own work. So this is my poem for the collection. It's about the fishing spider, which is rather large. And yeah, my wife and I were hiking at Deep Black Quarry and met one. And this is my telling of that story. Fishing spider. You meet her among the cracks and right angles of Deep Black Quarry. She crabs back to cover her clutch of eggs. Your muscles go taut in the same way, wild and unconsidered, heart quick, without enough breath to compare your relative mass. You back away. I tell you she can prey on fish 5 times her body size just to turn your blood on, pumping too loudly in your ears to consider her family, the nursery web spiders, a different way to name her. I wonder what is or isn't automatic or natural. We ought to be careful looking over the menu at Fisher's Cafe that no one decides to name us by what we consume. Bread people, beef people, egg crushers and cheese melters, oil folks and forest eaters, mountaintop destroyers, those who confuse shame for power, then swallow it all, drainers of rivers, desert makers, 73 hot dogs in 10 minutes, entire neighborhoods of old homes, feeding on memory, feeding on self-improvement, clutching our eggs and our pets close to the tangle of veins and artery and nerves in our core, web of ribs, sternum, and carapace. I'll end with the poem that ends my first short collection and is the title poem for questions about circulation. It's a numbered poem, but I hate reading the numbers out loud. Actually, I learned a trick from Matthew Olsman, who's an incredible poet. He said to tell everyone how many numbers there are so they know it's not going to go on forever. So there are 11 in this. I'll include the numbers and see how it feels. Questions about circulation. Number 1, a mouth over our mouth, nose pinched, somebody else's idea of breath opening our chest, wet, warm molecules in disarray, a long line of wanderers. 2, a generous teacher invites us into his home. Anchored by polio, he tells us he travels widely within these walls. In response to some needy and earnest thing one of us says, he observes that it takes 7 years to know a place. His whole being is breath and season. 3, each year beyond 7, we grow more used to our own bullshit. Lawn decorations, new wall colors, sloppy thinking, some specific thing arrested. 4, after diverting, seemingly halting the river with coffers, workers depose the old dam, the concrete despot, the river bottom naked, littered, stinking. The sawmills are long gone like the trees worth harvesting. We come back to flow and fish, to recreate a better state. I declare to return, but worry it could be a cycle. Like so many things, can a river know roundness? And can we say we have made something better when the timeline is so long? Number 5, we have been walking a long time. Teeth bite delicate tree-shaped wood sorrel and release sweetness. Chew the delicate pink tendrils of grapevines. Eyes seek wild fruit and a source of water. With each breath we try to smell the cool creek. We have been walking for generations. 6, you pack and unpack your home. Are you really wondering if you bring your books everywhere you go? Are you wondering if you walk without stopping to read? Are books anchors or catapults? You say you are fairly certain words get into the blood, but cannot be detected by mass spectrometry. When you open the box of books, the whole room begins to smell like you. Number 7, we tax and dig and build. A forgotten arm of the river is buried under the streets. It rushes icy and black and pretends to pulse from a heart the size of a garage. Home among the great stone foundations, I-beams and rebar, the covering roads built to allow movement are choked. 8, 2 things. A vein is a way elsewhere and part of a circuit. Libraries archive 1,000 ways elsewhere. When they work properly, the books come back. 9, In fact, we crossed the Great Plains alone or in the smallest groups, out and returning to the last breath blossoming in a black, rattling flower, and 20 shadows of ourselves from every Christmas before movement forced our lives out of our childlike chrysalises, the first house of memory. 10. Owning a home, a foundation grasping at the surface of the earth, a sandy hilltop, glacial clay, the shore of the draining river, the flooding river, abundance and scarcity, a long, slow breath opening our chest warm and wanting oxygen, choked like an algae bloom, like beetle kill, like a triumphant fistful of wild carrots. 11. A long line of wanderers coming to rest, spiteful of the long line of wanderers yet to come, taxing the land we love, forcing arrest, all us little life things stumbling into community with its consequences. Thank you.
This is my book, and that is my oil painting, which is hanging in my living room. It carries a lot of emotion. And I will give you a few history lessons, which some of you may already know. Shredded birch leaves fill a jigsaw puzzle. I was born in Germany during World War II. My parents fled Lithuania because the Russian communists were coming. And my grandmother, who lived with her two boys, little ones, my grandfather was one, in the country. She walked through the woods to get some food and never returned. Never. She was captured and slaughtered, I'm sure. My first poem is The Last Stronghold. Breslau, the last stronghold of the Third Reich against Soviet forces, was seen to a siege lasting 14 weeks that cost the lives of 170,000 civilians. An estimated 70% of the city was destroyed by the Red Army. Friends, I have secrets to share about forced labor. I found yellow stained letters tied and bundled, buried years under fountain pen markings. Sunlight brightens these rippled, brown, fractured cobwebs in my sweaty hands. Father's ebony ink flowed from a nib pen as I scribble in this journal. It took me 10 years to write this book, taking the letters my father wrote in Europe. Consular Branch Office of the Political Advisor, Frankfurt am Main, May 1950. Personal Fragenboden, birthplace, Pomzadia, Lithuania. Eye color blue, profession physician, internment camps, Thorn, Breslau, Posen, Leslau, and Stalingrad. 6 years, 4 months, 12 days, lager camps, number 5771 and 2102. Father, which was worse, Stalin's gulag or Hitler's concentration camps? Did holy shoe soles burn snow blood rivers, warming logs stocked bag bodies? Spirits prowl on flimsy records. Why did you leave your homeland? Fear of Russian communist lineage. Father died when I was 6. Mother disappeared in 1943. languages. I can speak and write Lithuanian, German, English, and Russian and Polish. And I remember parental tongues rolling Lithuanian, Polish, Russian words into one scrambled sentence. English name, Mickiewicz. Polish name, Mickiewicz. Destination. I want to be reunited with my family in Chicago. The years have blown your ashes into the 700-year-old Lithuanian family tombstone. Bare trees remain, the only witnesses. And that folder standing up there is document duplicates that you may look at if you wish. Only if you wish. Now, when I was growing up, my mother hoarded amber. She was an amber freak. But all Latvians and Lithuanians collect amber, tons of amber. And here I will tell you the ultimate amber test. I rummaged through drawers for fossilized amber, pine sap aged millions of years in a colorful range: honeydew, milk, white, cognac, green, black, or rare violet. One prescribed for arthritis, headaches, heartaches, stomach, spleen, kidney, aching joints, or teething babies. A traveler's talisman, an early Christian symbol of courage. Egyptians placed amber in a beloved casket to ensure the body remained whole. Amber instills a carefree, sunny disposition, dissolving opposition. Grab a nugget. It was $2.99 online, shipping extra. When I was a Chicago brat, Mother dragged me to Marshall Field and Company on State Street to replace a piece of broken amber on her Lithuanian bracelet. Weeks later, we returned to pick it up. Mother removed a 100% piece of wool from her purse and a tiny square of tissue paper for the ultimate test. She rubbed the new amber on pure wool, placing a tiny square of tissue on top. It did not rise. Her thunder voice shook Tiffany's dome. This is not amber. Replace this with real amber. Again, we traveled on 2 buses to Marshall Field and Company. For the final amber test, this stone was half the size of the original. Mother's tissue paper rose like a flag at 90 degrees, creating static electricity. Lesson learned: always check your amber. Amber. Her bracelet was similar to this, and that was like half a nugget gone. Amber. Test your amber. And when you give amber to a beloved, better test it before you buy it. That's the best thing. So the tree of life. In dreams, Father's body trembles. Each vibration stirs my gut. Forget Georgia O'Keeffe's flower love. This is ALS. Listen to missiles soar above barrier wreaths, throwing mothers and children into an abyss. Look past concentration camps and handful of survivors. beyond, annihilated from familial remains. Depleted love hovers over Sudan, Yemen, Syria, Kashmir, Rwanda, Ukraine. Do not forget Stalin's forced labor, famine. 6 million Ukrainians exterminated and 3 million children churned into compost. Does history repeat itself? Grief multiplies. Repeat after me. L'amour, je t'aime, liebe, amare, mille. These words wrapped around your wombs and bowels, let them fly, clinging to earth. Watch words spin, gripping you and me in red canna, black iris, and lots of love. Love me, friends. Oh, here is one you won't believe. It got a pushcart award. Okay. From Bottom Dog Press. And it's funny, it's a poem that I hardly ever read to people. You'll know why. Darling, why am I alone? Mother asked. Shallow roots bury thoughts at the edge of night. Your back turned at the studio. Later, I offered your ashes to Vea Mate, mother of the wind. To my dead aunts and cousins, why wasn't I ever told? Shivering maples seek answers. Several oaks root our secrets. Frost comes, everything's undone. Bodies sway in the wind. Mother Rose, why did you leave me home alone, frigid under the table? Under the locked steamer trunk, I searched for breath. An angel plays the flute, while the harp saves all. Crimson roses crown mother's head, smiles rejoice. It's Christmas Day in the morn. Adult laughter echoed through the apartment. My coal stocking overflowed, overflowed with coal, stacked higher than Cousin Bill's, next to our cold furnace. My tears flooded the room. A tsunami dream. You'll never believe this. I wrote this 2 nights before 9/11 from a dream. Tidal wave approaches, threatening clouds search for one person. I escaped the late rawness, zip amber rings into a satin pouch, and run into panic dazed faces. Herded into Nazi railroad cars zooming away. Witness the sea gather strength from swirling gray forces. Hydraulic waters rise high on land. Deserted farms and cars. I stand, continue the fight. No place to hide or retreat. Many die. Oh, on Lake Erie, I reach toward nimbus clouds. Trail winds call my name. We both live. We made it through 9/11 at home. Peppermint tea. I cup the unknown silence, and I share with thee. Would you like to hear a wedding song? It's something I wrote for my daughter and her husband of 11 years. She gave me a 4-day notice to write it, okay? All right. A wedding song for my daughter, Lara and Daniel. The soul, a widening sky with thousands of candles, Rumi. Love is a tree whose branches reach into eternity, firm roots set deep within earth. Spring hums, birds flit in the rose garden. Listen to the music whisper, winter's ended. Daffodils and sage cannot control their laughter. The nightingale returns to sing as master of all birds. The feast is set. The wind pours wine. We gather to celebrate the union of love. Bonds transform hardship into luck. This wedding is a braiding, joining two into one as the sun melts a lake of ice. Untangle old knots. Someone else tied for you. Oh my, try this new one together. Today, prepare. Enter this marriage as if crossing the Alps and going home. Pledge truth. Find a failing. A sweet door opens to a garden. Make a bonfire. Be warmed. Burn old and newfound stupidities. Padlock your initials to a bridge. Toss the key into rapid rivers. Push back darkness. Sing honey and salt to the source of bread and life and the play of rainbows. Braid spring blossoms throughout summer and fall. Plant your orchard. Prepare winter's harvest. Delight with years of prosperity. Let us dance under the galaxy of Venus and Mars, toasting King Grand Cuvée champagne under the stars. I told my daughter, hey, isn't it time that you and Daniel read this poem together? Huh? Remember? The minister read it even, and he took a copy to California with him. What else do you want? It also hung in the Ursuline College. I made a display, handwritten words and flowers, and a nun came up to me and said, can I borrow your poem for my class, philosophy class? I said, go ahead, right away, sure. Well, thank you so much for your patience. And I tried to end it on a happier note, not prolonged the sadness of war. Thank you.